President Trump could call us up. He could just say, given the circumstances of an invasion, insurrection, and resistance against federal law being enforced, I'm calling up the militia, ordering all the men to come together in every county, put the veterans in charge of training and organizing all the other men, and just have them stand to and await his orders. He can do that, and I think he should do that. And so that's what I'll be advocating for from him. So from the bottom, from down in the rank and file, we can, let President Trump know that we're ready to serve, encourage him to do that, call us up as the militia, order us all to come together in our counties under his command, which gives you complete legal sanction to do what you're doing.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. Make no mistake, the reason Donald Trump pardoned Stewart Rhodes and the January 6th insurrectionists is so he can call upon them again in the event he needs their help staying in power. In the Midas Studios film Against All Enemies that I produced after January 6th about domestic violent extremist organizations like the Oath Keepers, we made some predictions that at the time were criticized by many as alarmist. They are all coming true. Like how what we used to call extremism is now government policy, and how who we used to call extremists are now agents of that same government. The one thing even I did not anticipate was the emergence of ICE, how the excuse of immigration enforcement would justify the creation of an internal regime protection force, and how the extremists we covered would be folded into that. Our democracy faces enormous threats. There are some states where democracy, as defined by the ability of citizens to choose their representatives and hold them accountable, is on the verge of collapse. But we are not merely playing defense. One of the stars of the film Against All Enemies is someone you know well by now. Kris Goldsmith is an Army vet and America's leading Nazi hunter and extremism researcher. He epitomizes this idea of not just defending democracy from behind the barricades, but taking the fight to its enemies, foreign and domestic. And he's got a new show appropriately titled On Offense. I'll let our conversation do the talking. Here's me and Kris Goldsmith. Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. We've got Kris Goldsmith back with what looks like a new studio set up behind you. Kris, tell us what's coming.
Yeah, so we are launching On Offense this week. It's a podcast that was in the idea phase since January. I finally got the time and the resources to actually do it. I'm still in the same location. I'm still filming from home. But over the last couple of weeks, I slammed out building a half studio, still not quite finished, but I wanted to make it a little more polished. The On Offense podcast is going to be hopefully helping people understand that as bad as things get, and that's what I come on these programs to talk about is all the bad shit, that we can go on offense and we can fight against it, and visually and improving the audio quality is part of that.
And that stands in sharp contrast to so much of the messaging that I've been part of too, which is about defending democracy, right? I mean, it implies we're on the back foot, we're holding the line. Shows, entire media companies like The Bulwark are all about fortifying democracy, but staying behind the barricade. Can you share with us sort of the animating principle of going on offense? It's a different approach.
Yeah, so part of the ethos behind my nonprofits, Task Force Butler Institute and Veterans Fighting Fascism, is that we impose costs on the bad guys. Most nonprofit organizations that counter hate groups are, repairing damage, are helping victims after the fact, but they're never making it, they're never providing any disincentives towards being a neo-Nazi or engaging in, violence or property destruction against targeted minorities. So when Task Force Butler bursted onto the scene a few years ago, we were a tiny, tiny little outfit that never got funded, but we punched way above our weight class because we simply were like, we're going to gather evidence of criminality by these people. We're going to put it all out, in a very clear report so that anyone can look at the evidence. And then we're going to put public pressure on law enforcement to to actually enforce the laws that are on the books. We don't need new laws to stop neo-Nazis from going out and terrorizing people. We just need cops to enforce the current laws. And as a veteran presenting the way that I do, bearded, tattooed, bald, combat vet, like I know as a veteran advocate that I can move mountains. So I am leveraging all of those privileges in order to combat hate groups with my nonprofits. But in the political realm, I can't do the nonprofit stuff. So On Offense was born out of a need to take on the fascists who currently, benefit from positions in public office, which nonprofits are not able to really fully engage with those types of problems.
That idea of imposing costs on the extremists in our midst, the extremist organizations and the extremist actors, it sounds pretty risky. It sounds pretty niche, like not everyone can do it. But technology has changed that. The environment in which we live has changed that. Now regular people have tools through which, with some help, they can hold extremists accountable. Can you elaborate on what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So Task Force Butler Institute and Veterans Fighting Fascism, the goal of my organizations is so that you don't need me, Kris Goldsmith, which is perhaps why we have so much difficulty getting funded. Like, the goal is to make ourselves redundant. So rather than, keep our Nazi tracking ideas confidential as trade secrets, we write instruction manuals on how people can gather evidence of criminality by these extremist groups. So we have the community response guide available for free on taskforcebutler.org. That is for people who are just entering the idea of anti-fascism or of even street protesting. There are things that you can do to support people on the ground without ever leaving your house. You can be, remote, watching the news and telling people on the ground what's going on, a few blocks away. There are all sorts of support roles in this accountability effort. And the reports the instruction manuals that we wrote to track hate groups, they apply to ICE. That was not the intention when we wrote them, 3 or 4 years ago. But when you're documenting crimes, you're documenting crimes. There's no difference. A masked individual representing a neo-Nazi group, Patriot Front, the only difference between them and ICE is that ICE wears black masks instead of white. They otherwise look exactly the same. So what we want to encourage people to do is recognize that the phone that you carry in your pocket has an incredibly good camera. If you read our instruction manuals, it will tell you how to take photos. Videos are important, but photos are better because you can capture details. We may not be able to ingest all of this information today, but in the coming decade, there is going to be a ton of material that we can use modern tools like AI to scrape through and look at ICE agents' shoelaces and types of shoes and what types of patches they're wearing, right? So that we can track incidents by each one of these individuals. We can do things like measure their gait. We can tell who someone is because of the way they walk. Now, the surveillance state is using those tools against protesters, but we have those tools too. So we want to encourage people to recognize that justice may not come fast, but it is going to come. And you, the everyday American, can play a role in it. You don't need any special skills or capabilities. You just go to taskforcebutler.org and the instruction manuals are right there under the resources tab.
I think you're right that justice might be too long in coming, but that it is definitely coming. On the other hand, if you look at the momentum after the recent elections, if you look at the pledges that we're starting to rack up here on this network from electeds and from candidates to demand hearings, to demand investigative powers for a J6 kind of commission to explore and investigate the crimes of DHS and ICE, justice and accountability might be coming sooner than we think. We just had Adam Kinzinger on, who pointed out that The next Congress is going to be Democratic. It's going to be populated by people who have received this message loud and clear, not just from us, but from their constituents, from the voters. We don't like what ICE is doing. We need to send the message of accountability, both because law and order is important, but also as a deterrent. How else do you stop masked thugs who think they will never be held to account for their crimes? So your instruction manuals and your guides on how to collect this evidence, I don't know, it might pay off far sooner than we realize.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I worked with Kinzinger's committee, with the January 6th committee. I submitted reports to them because I was infiltrating extremist organizations leading up to the 2020 election and then beyond, once the Stop the Steal lie took over all of MAGA. I was providing warnings to the FBI, and those reports, went unheard for a while, so I gave them to the committee. They are part of the January 6th committee's record. One of the things that I think that Americans may understand in a deep level but don't have at the front of their mind is the idea that we've been letting the bad guys get away with stuff, and we just Democrats seem to act like if they just act nice, the other guys are going to act nice too. America has a history of failing to punish its insurrectionists, its racists, its traitors. Whether it's the Civil War, where we kind of we're just like, okay, it's over. We're all gonna try and make this thing work, rather than being really harsh on the Confederate States. Or after January 6th, we really took our time to slowly start investigating. We can't rely on government alone. Almost none of the convictions out of the hundreds and hundreds that before they were pardoned were convictions for January 6th were not the result of FBI initiated investigations. It was people like me and the volunteers at Task Force Butler and the relative handful of colleagues that we have in this kind of weird research sector. A lot of self-taught people just went through hours and hours of footage and thousands of photos, found people's identities and evidence of them committing crimes, submitted reports to the FBI, and the FBI had no choice. The charging document was written for them. All they had to do was put it in front of a judge. We are going to do the same thing with ICE.
Switching gears, because this is just as important. There are very few things as important as holding ICE accountable. But one of the things that I put at that same level is the need to keep the National Guard on side as long as we can, because in its nature, it is devoted to the Constitution in a way that ICE is not. But that's part history, part culture, but also because if we alienate the Guard, if we signal to our military that they belong to Trump and not the American people, that's a Rubicon. You don't come back from that as a society. Can you talk about our efforts there? And I understand you're actually testifying soon in New York about how we deal with the threats from the Trump administration to use the military against us, our military against us.
Yeah. So the Unite for Veterans Coalition, Valor Media Network, and I have been working together to help people understand that there is a real fundamental difference, not just between the National Guard and ICE as organizations, but between the people who join these organizations. People who join the National Guard are doing it because they want to help their communities. They have grown up in a world where they're seeing the National Guard mobilized for things like hurricanes and earthquakes and other natural disasters. That is good, honorable, and needed service that people should be very proud of. And that's what countless Americans have signed up for. ICE is different, especially now. The newest recruits for ICE, they are joining because they want to put their hands on brown people. That is the reason anyone is joining ICE today. So the Know Your Difference campaign that Valor has produced has been helping people understand this fundamental difference and to not make the mistake of assuming that anyone who's in uniform is an enemy, because that is not the case. The National Guard are people from your community. Now, where Trump is trying to corrupt that is when he's bringing National Guard from one state and using it to occupy another. His hope is that he is finding loyal Trump voters who happen to be National Guardsmen, and that he's putting them in a state where the conservative media ecosystem has convinced them it's really dangerous and these people are not real Americans, almost as if they were performing presence patrols the same way that I did in a foreign country, in Iraq, in a war zone.
Yeah. Well, we're going to end with that breakout Know the Difference campaign video. We've got a couple circulating, but this one really hits hard. You know what? I might put a link to the Spanish language version in the notes below, because that one hits even harder. I mean, it speaks directly to the community that is feeling the boot right now. Kris, thanks as always for joining us.
Hey, let's be really direct. So the link in the show notes about the Know Your Difference campaign, we would really appreciate you who are watching this spreading it everywhere on social media. The more eyeballs that it gets, the more the algorithm rewards it, the more people will see it. It is critically important that we educate Americans on the fact that not everybody in uniform is an enemy, and in fact, if we treat the National Guard as they deserve to be treated, when they are called upon to enforce unlawful orders, we will be sure that they will refuse those unlawful orders.
100%. I think the video has 500,000 views already, but this network has over 5 million subscribers, and America has over 300 million people. So we can do better. The link's below. Thanks, Kris.
Thank you.
Since America's founding, our National Guard has stood the watch, in peace and war, in storms and strife, in the communities we call home. They look like us because they are us. Your National Guardsmen are not just your protectors. They are your sons, your daughters, your neighbors. They are not this. There is a reason our guardsmen wear their names over their hearts. There is a reason they do not hide their faces. Because, unlike ICE, America's National Guard serves with pride, with honor. This is your National Guard. And this is ICE. Know the difference.